Vice President J.D. Vance sat down with our own Laura Trump last night to talk about what it's like to work for a guy who never sleeps and is often the last person to call you at night and then the first person to call you in the morning, even though, like, he's got, what, 100,000 people who work for him? Here he is on Laura Trump last night.
One thing I've learned just working with him like every day is he doesn't have an off switch. Like sometimes the president will call you at 12:30 or at 2 in the morning, and then he'll call you at 6 in the morning about a totally different topic. It's like, Mr. President, did you go to sleep last night? Like, what is going on here? And, you know, he says that's been one surprise. I think the second, I don't know if I'd call it a surprise, but certainly something that I've learned is a little bit related to what I said earlier. He really does empower his people to do things. What's made this so much fun is the president all the time is just saying, JD, you go and do this, or JD, you go and talk to these leaders about this particular issue, or oh, you really care about this? No, you can do it. I'm not. You don't have to have me looking over you all the time. And there is this trust, and you see it with the president and Secretary Rubio. You see it with the president, Susie Wiles, with Steve Witkoff, our special envoy, who's done such a good job. Is he's very willing to say, "This is what I want done. You go and do it. Report back, or ask me for help if you need it." But that ability to delegate and trust his people has been really amazing.
Yeah, that shows a real sign of confidence, a leader who feels confident in the people he's selected around him in terms of his cabinet, his vice president, and is willing to delegate, but is still on top of everything. That story that JD told about being called at odd hours of the night or morning, I can relate to because my own husband has had that happen. And it's interesting. He'll be in another country, and he's calling Sean in the middle, of the night about something to do with a union issue here in the United States, for example. His mind is on everything. And the one thing I will tell you that has been the most interesting, Charlie and I actually went to brunch yesterday, and we had this conversation, which is the closer that you are to watching Donald Trump work, the more you realize the guy is just genius.
Well,
he's genius.
Yeah, and, I don't know that I could work for someone like that because it'd be really hard.
Yeah.
The phone calls early in the morning. But if you're talking about who you want to hire to get something done for you, that's who you hire.
Of course.
Right? You vote for someone like that, not because you could handle it yourself, but because, and I've said this is the second time I've said this, but it's like a superpower to run on that little sleep, but have a mind that is that active and that flexible to be able to engage on issues all over the place. That's what it takes to be president.
Including remodeling. It's on everything.
Right. Yeah, and he is, and it's not like he's just like this for like a couple of weeks. He's been like this his whole life.
Right.
And I don't know, it really is truly remarkable. Obviously, we're still, looking forward in politics and talking a lot about who could possibly fill these shoes, who could possibly succeed a guy like Donald Trump. And Laura asked JD about his own potential in 2028.
I just think that I don't like thinking about it because I like thinking about the job that I have right now. And if we do a good job in 2025 and 2026, then we can talk about the politics in 2027. But I really think the American people are so fed up with folks who are already running for the next job 7 months into the current one. There are a lot of great people. I think if I do end up running, it's not going to be given to me either on the Republican side or on the national side. So I'm just going to keep on working hard. I think this is the most important job that I've ever had. It may be the most important job I ever have outside of being a father to those 3 beautiful kids. So I'm going to try to do my best job. And I think if I do that, the politics will figure itself out.
One of the things that we don't talk enough about is President Trump is not just himself. The political careers that he has launched that will carry on this America First message for generations to come is pretty remarkable.
There are some folks doing incredible jobs right now for the president. You look at that stable of people, and there's a lot of good bench talent, as they say in sports. So I think the vice president's answer there was very politically cagey, but also really honest. There's a lot of good choices, and it's a good spot for America to be in to say there's a lot of talented people who could do that job well.
It's really smart because if things don't go well, though, his political star, will fall with that or rise with it. So I think it's a really smart way to look at it. Listen, there's a lot of people who are working for the president, and as you said, as we talked about, there's a lot of sacrifice that's involved for everybody involved. And I can only speak for my own family. And I've said this before on this couch. A lot of sacrifice. Wouldn't do this for any other president than President Trump because he's running such a great team, a great operation. It's worth it if you feel like you're getting stuff done. What we've done for our family under Mitt Romney? No, I would not. Just for the record, I would not do what I'm doing and make these sacrifices for an administration that I didn't think was actually going to change history.
Yeah, the sacrifice is a powerful testament. I like 8 hours of sleep a night. I think I would need that. I'd have to put it on answering machine.
You're going to have to stay at Fox Business.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.